just before he announced recently. And in that conversation with Ed, I assured him, I said, look, I want to be honest with you. I want you to know that I'm looking at this seat. I said, I wish you well, but I intend at some point to be a candidate in this race. I said, and Ed, I understand the desire of the folks in Washington to clear the field for just one candidate. I said, I don't think that's a good idea, but I understand the desire to prevent a bruising Democratic primary where the Democratic nominee comes out with black eyes and a broken leg, and then you've got to run against Scott Brown, who's sitting there with $20 million at the end of the day, and it's a tough thing for us to overcome. I said, I pledge to you right now, I told Ed, I said, I will not run a negative campaign against another Democrat. I promise you that. Number one. I said, I will run the type of campaign where that Democrats can be proud of, where at the end of the day on primary night, if I'm not the candidate, I'll run the type of campaign that I can stand up and say in my concession speech, let's all support the Democratic nominee, whether it be Ben Downing or Mike Capuano or Ed Markey, and I can say that and mean it, and bring the supporters who I have behind the Democratic nominee. That's the type of primary race that I will run. That I will run. And I agree with John's point that primaries can be helpful. The reason that one of the reasons that the Democratic Party is resurgent right now across the country, and especially in Massachusetts, is that we reflect the people that we represent. We have a big tent policy. We have Democrats of all different stripes. We have very liberal, progressive, moderate, conservative Democrats under our tent. That's why we have a future. And if you look at the Republicans, it's a very narrow sliver of people that they represent. So it's my hope that my background will increase the number of people who come to the Democratic banner, that consider themselves Democrats, that identify with the issues that we talk about: public education, gun control, creating jobs, securing Social Security, making sure that Social Security is there for future generations. Those are Democratic ideas, and those are ideas that I stand for. Lastly, the Scott Brown formula. And look, I realize that in this room there are a lot of people who are smart, astute, some brilliant political minds. I am not among them. I'll concede that most of the people in this room are political experts of the first order. And again, I am not among them. But I'll leave it to you. As we all know, Scott Brown's formula, and he will be the candidate on the other side. Don't let them kid you with any misdirection. He's waiting. He knows he can raise money in a short time, a lot of money, and we have to be prepared for that. But his formula is really to try to pull over Labor votes, moderate Democratic votes, to add to Republican votes to get enough to win. That's how he was victorious against Martha Copley. He was able to, I think, in some ways mislead, especially Labor, what he was going to do when he got to Washington, because he actually voted against increasing unemployment benefits, at a time in our country that we had the most unemployment since the Great Depression. He didn't tell them that he was going to do that. But when you think about his formula of success, he was able to grab moderate Democrats and independents, who a lot of them are really Democrats, but they just, they hang out there as independents. But look, I'll let you make the decisions. You're smart enough to make these decisions. Who do you think would be better at taking away that formula than I would? Look, I was an iron worker for 18 years, strapped on a pair of work boots. I worked at the General Motors facility up in Framingham when they closed that plant and moved it over the border into Mexico. I was a welder down at the Quincy shipyard when they closed that that facility down in the face of foreign competition. So I know what foreign trade agreements mean, not just as policy, but what it meant to me as a worker and what it meant to those communities in Framingham and Natick and Quincy when those jobs went away. I know what it's like to stand in an unemployment line during hard times. And there's nobody with that type of experience in the United States Senate. There's no one. And you know, this whole idea about a truck and the coat and all that stuff with the pickup truck with Scott Brown. I had a pickup truck too when I was an ironworker. But it was a different kind of truck. My truck was a work truck. It was a work truck. I didn't drive from my law office to my house. That wasn't the trip I took. I had a welding machine in the back. I had tools in the back. The bed was rusting out because it was an older truck, a Ford F-150. And my coat, look, I've seen Scott Brown's coat. It costs about $1,600 at Saks. Mine cost $48 at Sears. And the elbows are worn out from work. So he won't be able to spin that story with me, because he's going to be up against somebody who really is a true Democrat, a working class, Joe Moakley, lunch bucket Democrat. And it'll be nice for once to have a member of the United States Senate who doesn't look at public housing as a program, but who lived in public housing, grew up in the housing projects in South Boston. It'd be nice to have someone who looks at trade policy differently than just a program or just an agreement, but look at it as the way it affects our families and our towns and cities as we see more and more jobs being tossed overseas. It'd be nice to have a member of the United States Senate who actually stood in an unemployment line and knows what that means to workers who are struggling, to families who are struggling, especially when you're running against a former U.S. Senator who denied those same benefits to the people that we all worry about and we all care about every single day. That's the type of Democrat I am. That's the type of Democrat I am. And we are at a tipping point where a lot of the things that Democrats in this country fought for generations are under assault. And I think it would help the U.S. Senate to have one son of a gun there who knows it from the work boots up and knows what you worry about. Someone who can close that disconnect between the American people and the United States Senate. With all due respect, now, I am not a candidate yet, but I am moving in that direction. I'm going around the state, I'm listening, like I'm listening this morning, meeting with people and measuring our support. Now, as I said to John before, and as he has said earlier, I think a primary is a good idea for the Democratic Party. It makes us stronger. It makes us stronger. It's an exchange of ideas where we really reflect the values of the people that we seek to represent. It's a good thing for us. It's a strengthening exercise. And as I said before, I will run an honorable campaign. I will take the People's Pledge. I don't want anybody on my behalf coming into Massachusetts and criticizing a fellow Democrat. That's not what we're about. That's not what we're about. We're about representing the people. We have the resurgence because we do that. We do that. We're a big tent. And look, I would be very, very honored. I know there are a number of people here that have already indicated support, but I would be tremendously honored if I could have your support in this primary race when I become, or if I become, a candidate. Thank you so much for your graciousness to me this morning. Thank you so much for your kindness to me in this last campaign. God bless Plymouth County, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you.